The city was alive with noise and light, but far from the bright streets there were places no one cared about. In those forgotten corners stood broken walls, fallen roofs, and streets covered in dust. It was here, among the ruins, that an alien girl lived. She was small, with eyes that seemed older than her years, and she carried the silence of someone who had seen too much. She had been alone for as long as she could remember. Once, long ago, there had been laughter and voices around her, but that world was gone. She did not think about it often because memories were painful. Instead, she focused on survival. Every day she searched for food, drinking water from rusty pipes or collecting rain in cracked jars. Her bed was nothing more than old blankets hidden under collapsed stone, but it kept her warm enough. The girl hid from everyone. She had learned that it was safer not to be seen. Humans walked by the ruins sometimes, carrying their bright devices, laughing with friends, or rushing to their homes. None of them ever noticed the shadows where she crouched. If they did, she would retreat deeper, holding her breath until they passed. To her, the city felt like another planet, a place full of people who would never understand her. At night, she climbed to the highest point she could find, often the broken roof of an old tower. From there, she stared at the stars. They looked the same as the ones she remembered from her childhood, when her parents had pointed at the sky and told her stories about faraway worlds. She whispered to the stars sometimes, asking them questions she knew they would never answer. It was her way of feeling less alone, even if the silence never truly left her heart. Her days were slow and quiet. She moved like a shadow, careful not to make a sound. She picked through garbage for scraps of bread or sometimes found fruit dropped from market stalls. If she was lucky, she discovered old cans that still held something inside. She never complained because there was no one to complain to. Hunger was simply a part of life, just like the loneliness she carried. Sometimes she watched humans from afar, families gathering at the park, children playing with toys, people calling each other by name. She did not hate them. She only felt the sharp ache of being outside their world. She imagined what it might be like to sit at a table, to eat with others, to laugh without fear. But such thoughts made her chest heavy, so she always turned away before the feelings grew too strong. The girl was not completely invisible. Stray animals sometimes wandered into her hiding places. Cats moved with quiet grace, and she admired how they lived without needing anyone. Birds hopped close to her when she tossed crumbs. Once, a dog barked at her, but when she crouched low and whispered, it stopped, tilting its head as if it recognized her loneliness. She felt a strange comfort with animals, as though they did not judge her the way people might. But no animal stayed with her. They always left, returning to their own lives. She had grown used to watching everything go away. That was why she trusted nothing and no one. Even so, there was a spark deep inside her, something she could not extinguish no matter how hard she tried. It was hope, small and fragile, but alive. It showed itself when she looked at the stars, when she remembered her parents' voices, or when she heard the laughter of others. She pretended it did not matter, but in truth she wished for someone to reach her, someone to see her. The city did not know she was there. To most people, she was just another shadow. To herself, she was a secret that belonged to no world. She believed this was how it would always be. She would live in silence, waiting for days to pass, hiding her face from everyone. But change has a way of finding those who least expect it. She could not know that her lonely nights would soon end. She could not guess that a small, simple life, a human's puppy, would walk into her world and change everything. For now, though, the alien girl sat alone on the cold floor of her shelter. She wrapped her thin arms around her knees and listened to the city's distant sounds. Lights flickered far away. Laughter carried on the wind, and the stars glimmered above her. She was a part of none of it, and yet all of it reminded her she was still alive. She closed her eyes, whispered a name she barely remembered, and let the night carry her into another lonely dream. Morning came slowly to the ruins. The alien girl opened her eyes as sunlight filtered through broken walls and touched her face. For a moment, she lay still, listening to the city's distant hum. The noise of cars, voices, and machines mixed together like a constant song. It was a song that never included her. She rose from her thin blanket, brushed the dust from her arms, and stepped carefully across the cracked ground. Her stomach ached with hunger. She had not eaten since the day before, and even then it had only been half a stale piece of bread. She moved quietly through the ruins, her bare feet making almost no sound. Caution guided her every step. She had learned that survival was not only about food, but also about being unseen. People who noticed her might ask questions, and questions always led to danger. She slipped into the alleys that ran between shops. Delivery crates stood stacked in corners, and she searched them with quick hands. Sometimes a fruit rolled loose or a piece of bread fell aside when humans were not careful. Today she found nothing. Her stomach twisted tighter, but she kept moving. Passing by a park, she stopped behind a rusted fence. Families were there already. Children ran with laughter, chasing balls while parents called after them. The smell of food drifted in the air: roasted corn, fried snacks, warm bread. The alien girl pressed her hand to her middle. Her throat tightened, not just from hunger but from longing. She wished she could sit among them, even for a single moment. But she knew better. She stepped back before anyone could see her. She walked deeper into the quieter streets where empty buildings stood. These were her safe places. She slipped inside one of them, an old shop with broken glass windows, and crouched in the corner. Dust covered the floor, but here she could rest her back against the wall and breathe without fear of being seen. The day passed slowly. She listened to footsteps outside, the laughter of children and the barking of dogs. She stared at the light moving across the floor as the sun rose higher, then began to fall again. Loneliness pressed harder on her. It was always this way: days filled with silence, nights filled with dreams that faded when she woke. When evening came, she climbed to her favorite place, the broken roof of the old tower. From there, the whole city stretched out before her. Lights flickered like tiny stars, and she felt the strange comfort of distance. She was part of the world only as an observer. The higher she climbed, the safer she felt. Sitting on the rooftop, she remembered her parents again. Their voices were soft in her memory like fading echoes. She tried to recall her mother's face, but the image slipped away. She tried to remember her father's laugh, but it was faint. Fear struck her. What if she forgot them completely? What if one day she woke up and could no longer hear their voices in her heart? She hugged her knees tightly. A tear slid down her cheek, but she quickly brushed it away. Tears did not change anything. They did not bring food, nor did they bring back her family. All they did was make her chest heavy. So she kept silent and forced herself to look at the stars again. The stars gave her a kind of strength. They were constant, always shining, always above her, no matter how dark the city felt. She imagined her parents watching from far away, whispering for her to stay strong. She whispered back to them, her words carried on the night wind. She did not know if they reached anyone, but it made her feel less forgotten. As she sat there, she heard something unusual. A faint sound, soft and high-pitched. At first, she thought it was a bird, but then it came again, closer, like a whimper. She frowned, leaning forward to listen. It was not a bird. It was the sound of a small creature in need. Her curiosity grew, but she did not move yet. She stayed still, listening carefully. The sound came again, this time with a short yelp. It echoed in the ruins below her tower. The alien girl's heart began to beat faster. Something was out there, something alive and lost. She looked down from the rooftop, eyes searching the shadows. She could not see it yet, but she knew it was near. She felt the air shift around her, as though the night itself was urging her to go look. She hesitated. Curiosity was dangerous. Every time she stepped into the open, she risked being discovered. Yet something deep inside her stirred. The sound was small, weak, almost like a cry for help. For the first time in a long while, the alien girl felt pulled toward another living being. She rose slowly, brushing dust from her clothes, and prepared to climb down. Her heart told her this moment was different, that this night would not end like the others. She did not know yet that the sound belonged to a creature who would change her lonely world forever. With quiet steps, she left the rooftop and moved into the ruins. The sound grew clearer, guiding her through the shadows. She followed it, unaware that each step was leading her closer to the beginning of a new chapter in her life. The alien girl stepped carefully through the ruins, following the faint sound that echoed in the night. Her senses were sharp from years of hiding. She moved like a shadow, her feet light, her breathing soft. The whimper came again, guiding her toward a collapsed building where broken stones and twisted metal formed a crooked path. She crouched low, her eyes scanning the darkness. At first, she saw nothing. Then, beneath a fallen beam, she spotted a small shape. It was trembling, its fur wet and dirty, its tiny body pressed against the cold ground. The sound she had heard came from it, a puppy no bigger than her arms could hold. Its whines were soft, full of fear and confusion. The girl froze. She had seen animals before, but never one so young and helpless. She watched the little creature's chest rise and fall, watched its eyes blink as it tried to move. The beam blocked its way, trapping it. The girl's heart tightened. She felt a strange pull inside her, something she had not felt in years, an urge to help. For a moment, fear held her back. She had lived so long by avoiding everything, by never reaching out. What if this was a trap? What if someone waited nearby? She listened carefully, but the night was empty except for the soft sound of the puppy. No one was there. It was just her and the tiny creature. Slowly, she crawled forward. The puppy noticed her and gave a weak bark, more like a squeak. Its tail wagged faintly, though it still trembled with fear. The girl tilted her head, surprised. Most animals ran when they saw her, but this one seemed to want her near. She placed her hands on the beam and pushed. It was heavy, but she was stronger than she looked. With effort, she shifted it just enough for the puppy to crawl free. The little creature stumbled toward her, its small paws slipping on the rubble. Before she could stop herself, she reached out and lifted it into her arms. The puppy was warm against her skin. Its fur was wet, but its body carried a faint heat that spread through her hands. It looked up at her with wide, trusting eyes, then gave a tiny lick on her fingers. The girl gasped softly. She could not remember the last time someone had touched her with kindness. Even though it was only an animal, the feeling made her chest ache. She held the puppy close, wrapping her arms around it. It snuggled against her, its trembling slowing as if it had finally found safety. The girl sat down on the cold ground, still holding the creature tightly. For the first time in so long, she did not feel completely alone. The minutes passed as she sat in silence with the puppy. The city lights flickered in the distance and the stars shone above, but she saw only the small being in her arms. Its breathing grew steadier, its tiny heart beating against her chest. She whispered softly, words she had not spoken in years. "You're safe now." The sound of her own voice startled her. She rarely spoke, and her words felt strange after so much silence. But the puppy responded with a small bark, almost as if it understood. The girl smiled faintly, a weak and rare smile, but real. As the night deepened, she carried the puppy back to her shelter in the ruins. She placed it on her blanket and watched as it curled into a small ball. Closing its eyes, she touched its fur gently, afraid that if she stopped it might disappear like all the other things she had once cared for. But the puppy stayed. Sleep came slowly to her that night. She lay beside the little creature, listening to its soft breaths. For the first time, the silence around her felt less heavy. The loneliness she had carried like a shadow seemed lighter, as though a small light had entered her dark world. Yet deep inside, she also felt fear. This bond was dangerous. She had built her life on staying invisible, on caring for nothing and no one. Now, with a single lost puppy, her walls had begun to crack. She tried to tell herself it was only for the night, that tomorrow she would let it go. But her arms tightened around it, and she knew she could not. The puppy had chosen her, and though she did not understand why, she felt that this meeting was no accident. Something had changed, something she could not yet name. As she drifted to sleep, she thought of her parents, of the stories they had told her long ago. They had said the universe was full of connections, invisible threads that tied lives together. She wondered if this little creature was one of those threads sent to pull her back toward a world she had long left behind. The night grew quiet. The girl and the puppy slept side by side, two orphans finding warmth in each other's presence. Neither knew it yet, but this small moment was the beginning of a new story, one that would lead her out of the shadows and into a world she had always feared to face. The morning sun was bright when the alien girl woke. She stretched slowly, her arms tightening around the small warmth beside her. The puppy still slept on her blanket, its chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. For a long moment she only watched it. The sight felt strange and new, something alive, something trusting her. It made her heart beat faster, both with joy and with fear. When the puppy opened its eyes, it wagged its little tail and barked softly. The sound filled the broken room like music. The girl touched its head gently, still amazed that the creature was real. She whispered, "I stay quiet," though she was not sure if it understood. But outside, footsteps echoed. The girl stiffened. She had lived her whole life avoiding people, and now someone was close. She quickly pulled the puppy closer, holding her breath as the sound grew louder. A young man's voice called out, worried and full of urgency. "Buddy, where are you?" "Buddy," The girl's eyes widened. The puppy barked in reply, tail wagging even harder. She tried to hush it, but it squirmed in her arms, eager to answer the familiar voice. The girl's heart pounded. She had been careful for so many years, yet now the creature she had saved was betraying her hiding place. The footsteps came nearer, crunching over the rubble. Soon a figure appeared at the broken doorway. It was a young human, tall compared to her but not yet fully grown into a man. His hair was messy, his clothes simple, but his eyes were sharp with worry. The moment he saw the puppy in her arms, his face lit up with relief. "There you are," he exclaimed, stepping forward. His gaze shifted to the girl, and for the first time in years she was truly seen. The alien girl froze. She expected anger or maybe fear. She had seen how people sometimes reacted to her kind in the past, with suspicion, with cruelty. She pulled the puppy tighter to her chest, bracing herself for harsh words, but instead the boy stopped and smiled gently. "You found him," he said softly. "Thank you." The girl blinked, confused. No one had ever thanked her before. She did not move, did not speak. Her throat felt tight, as though words had forgotten how to come out. The boy stayed where he was, not rushing forward. He crouched slightly, lowering himself so he did not seem threatening. The puppy wriggled in her arms, barking happily, clearly wanting to go to him. The boy chuckled. "Looks like he already trusts you." The girl looked down at the puppy, then back at the boy. Something inside her shifted. She had imagined this moment many times, that if anyone ever saw her, it would end badly. Yet here stood a human, not angry, not scared, only grateful. Still, her fear was strong. Slowly, she began to back away, keeping the puppy close. The boy noticed and raised his hands in peace. "It's okay," he said softly. "I won't hurt you. I just want him back. He's my friend." The girl hesitated. She wanted to believe his words, but trust was not easy for her. She lowered her head, hiding her face beneath her hair. The puppy barked again, licking her chin before struggling toward the boy. Her arms shook. A part of her wanted to keep the puppy, afraid of losing the only warmth she had known in years. But another part of her knew it did not belong to her. With slow, trembling hands, she placed the puppy on the ground. The little creature ran straight to the boy, tail wagging furiously. The boy laughed in relief, scooping the puppy into his arms. He hugged it close, whispering, "Don't run off like that again." Then he looked back at the girl. "Thank you," he said again, more firmly this time. His eyes were kind, his voice steady. He did not look at her with fear, only curiosity and respect. "I don't know who you are, but you saved him. That means everything to me." The girl said nothing. Her lips parted slightly as though she wanted to answer, but no words came. She only stared at him, trying to understand why he spoke to her like that. The boy noticed her silence but did not press. He gave her a small nod, holding the puppy against his chest. "Maybe I'll see you again," he said gently. Then, without forcing her to stay or speak, he turned and walked away, his footsteps fading into the morning light. The girl stood frozen long after he was gone. Her heart raced. Her hands still tingled from where the puppy had rested. She could not understand what had just happened. No one had ever looked at her that way before. Not with pity, not with judgment, but with simple kindness. She sank to the ground, hugging her knees. Her mind replayed the boy's words again and again. "Thank you." They echoed in her chest, breaking through the silence she had carried for so long. For the first time, she wondered if the world outside her hiding places was not as cruel as she believed. Perhaps there were people who could see her, not as a stranger to fear, but as someone worth speaking to. The thought both scared her and filled her with a strange warmth. "She-do," whispered softly to herself, the sound of her own voice trembling in the air. Maybe not all humans are the same. The puppy's wagging tail and the boy's gentle smile stayed in her mind as the day passed. She did not know it yet, but this small meeting had already changed her path. The walls she had built around her life were no longer unbreakable. For the first time, she felt the weight of a question she could not ignore. Was she still meant to live only in shadows, or was it time to step into the light? The ruins felt different after that morning. The alien girl sat in her corner, arms wrapped around her knees, but her mind was not quiet like before. The memory of the boy's gentle smile kept returning, uninvited. His voice echoed in her head, soft yet certain. "Thank you." She whispered it to herself sometimes, just to hear how it sounded. It was a strange word, one she had never received before. She told herself it was nothing. He had his puppy and she had her shadows. The worlds they lived in were too far apart. Yet her heart refused to forget. The next day, she moved through the alleys as usual, searching for scraps. Hunger pressed hard on her stomach. She passed the park, keeping to the fences, but then she noticed something unusual. The boy was there, sitting on a bench with the puppy on his lap. He was not laughing with friends or busy with family like the others. He was waiting. The girl froze. She stayed hidden, her eyes peering through the gaps in the fence. The boy looked around as though searching for someone. After a while, he placed a small box on the ground near the fence, stood up and walked away. The puppy barked happily, but he only smiled and called it back. He never turned to see if anyone took the box. Curiosity gnawed at her. When the boy was gone, the girl crept to the box. Inside lay bread, fruit, and a bottle of clean water. Her breath caught. She looked around quickly, expecting a trick, but the streets were quiet. Carefully, she took the box back to her hiding place. That night, she ate until her stomach no longer hurt. The food was fresh, not scraps or garbage. Each bite filled her with warmth. For the first time in years, she felt what it meant to be full. She stared at the stars above her shelter, whispering softly, "Why would he do this?" Days passed, and each morning she found another box. Sometimes it held food, sometimes a blanket, sometimes even small things she could use, a candle, a piece of cloth, a bar of soap. She never saw the boy leave them, but she knew it was him. The thought made her chest feel light, though she tried to hide the feeling from herself. One evening, as the sun sank low, she finally saw him again. He stood near the edge of the ruins, not too close, not too far. The puppy wagged its tail, sniffing the ground. The boy looked toward the shadows where she hid and spoke softly. "I don't know if you can hear me," he said, his voice carrying on the breeze. "But I hope you're safe. You don't need to be afraid. I'll keep leaving food for you. It's the least I can do." The girl clutched the wall beside her, torn between stepping out and staying hidden. Her heart beat like a drum. She wanted to believe him, yet fear held her still. She stayed silent, but his words sank deep into her. That night, she dreamed of her parents. They stood by her side, smiling gently. Her mother whispered, "Kindness still exists. Don't run from it forever." She woke with tears on her face and the memory of the boy's voice in her ears. Over time, she grew bolder. When she knew the boy would leave food, she began to linger nearby, watching from the shadows as he placed the box down. The puppy often barked happily, pulling at its leash as though it sensed her presence. Sometimes the boy would laugh softly and say, "She's close, isn't she?" The girl could not help but smile, though she never stepped out. One evening, the boy surprised her. Instead of leaving quickly after setting down the box, he sat on the ground beside it. He took out a piece of bread from his own pocket and began to eat slowly. His eyes stayed on the ruins, calm and patient. "You don't have to talk," he said quietly. "You don't even have to come close. I just want you to know you're not alone." The words pierced her heart. Alone, that was the one truth she had always lived with. Yet here was someone who refused to let her remain that way. She stayed hidden, but her breath shook and tears blurred her vision. The days became weeks. The boy kept coming and the girl kept watching. She began to whisper small words when he was gone, practicing her voice. Simple words like thank you and hello. She wanted to be ready for the moment she would finally step out. The puppy grew more restless each time, tugging at its leash, whining toward the shadows. The boy chuckled. One day, he said to it, "She'll trust us." The girl hugged herself as she listened. For the first time in her life, she felt the heavy wall around her beginning to fall. She was still afraid, still unsure, but the boy's patience was slowly reaching her. Every night as she lay on her blanket, she thought of him. His kindness was not loud, not demanding. It was steady, like a quiet light in the darkness, and though she did not yet step into that light, she knew deep inside that her life would never return to what it had been before. The city moved fast, but inside the ruins, time felt different. Days blurred into nights and nights into mornings, yet something was changing. The girl no longer hid all the time. She stayed close to the edges of the park, where the boy often appeared. She still avoided the open streets, but the fear that once ruled her steps was slowly breaking. The boy kept his promise. Every day he left something for her. Food, water, sometimes even little things she didn't expect. Once he left a small lantern with a tiny candle inside. Another time he left a book with pictures, though he didn't know if she could read. Each gift carried a piece of his thoughtfulness, and each one reached her heart. One evening, she found the courage to do something she had never done before. When the boy placed a box near the fence and turned to leave, she whispered, barely loud enough for him to hear, "Thank you." The boy stopped in his tracks. His head turned slowly, eyes searching the shadows. For a moment, the air was completely still. The puppy barked happily, pulling toward the ruins. The boy smiled softly. He didn't step forward or chase her voice. He only nodded once and said, "You're welcome." Then he walked away. The girl sank back into her hiding place, heart racing, face wet with tears. It was the first time in years she had spoken to another soul. The next day, the boy returned with something different. He brought a second blanket, folded neatly, and placed it down with the food. He didn't say much, only a quiet, "In case the nights get colder." The girl watched him go, her fingers trembling as she touched the blanket. She wrapped it around herself that night and felt warmth that came not just from the cloth, but from the care behind it. Slowly, the walls between them began to weaken. She still stayed hidden, but sometimes she would leave small signs that she had been there. Once she arranged the empty bottles neatly before he came back. Another time, she placed a wildflower near the fence after taking the food. The boy noticed each sign, and though he never spoke about it, his smile showed he understood. But the city was not blind. People had begun to whisper. Some children said they saw a shadow moving in the ruins. A few shopkeepers muttered about stolen scraps. Rumors spread and suspicion grew. One afternoon, 2 men walked by the park and saw the boy near the fence. "Hey," one of them called. "What are you doing out here every day?" The boy straightened, hiding his worry. "Just feeding the stray dogs," he answered calmly, patting the puppy's head. The men laughed. "That's too much food for just one pup," one said. But they didn't press further. They walked away, shaking their heads. The girl had been watching, and fear clenched her chest. She realized how dangerous it was for the boy to help her. If people discovered the truth, they might not understand. They might treat her as a threat, something to be removed. That night, she could not sleep. She kept thinking of the boy, of how easily his kindness could turn into trouble for him. The next morning, she did not go near the fence. She stayed deep inside the ruins, hidden in the shadows. But when she peeked out hours later, she saw the boy still sitting by the park bench, waiting. He didn't bring food this time. He just sat quietly, the puppy beside him, his eyes scanning the ruins with a patient calm. Finally, he spoke. "I don't know why you're hiding today, but I want you to know, I'm not afraid of trouble. If people don't understand, that's their choice. I just want to be your friend." The words struck her deeply. She covered her mouth with her hands to stop the sobs from escaping. For so long, she believed the world would never accept her. Yet here was someone who chose her even with the risk. Later that night, when the streets were empty, she stepped out of the ruins and went to the spot where he had sat. On the ground, she placed a small stone she had carved with trembling hands. She didn't know if it looked like anything, but she had tried to make the shape of a heart. It was her way of answering him. The next day, when the boy found the stone, his face lit up wearing the quiet joy. He held it gently, as though it were more precious than anything else. "I'll keep this safe," he whispered. The connection between them grew stronger. Still, the girl knew the city's whispers would not stop. People would eventually come searching. She could not stay hidden forever. Yet for the first time in her life, she no longer felt powerless. With the boy's kindness standing beside her, she believed she might face the world differently. She sat beneath the ruined walls that evening, holding the blanket he had given her, the stone still missing from her hand. Her heart was no longer as heavy as before. She closed her eyes and thought, maybe tomorrow I will step out of the shadows. Maybe tomorrow I will let him see me. And as the moon rose high above the broken city, the girl realized she was not afraid of tomorrow anymore. The sun had barely risen when the alien girl stepped out of her hiding place. Her hands shook slightly and her breath came in quiet, careful bursts. She held the blanket he had given her tightly around her shoulders, and the small carved stone rested in her palm. The ruins that had been her home for so long felt strange in the light of day, no longer just a place of shadows, but a world waiting to be seen. She looked around, scanning the park where the boy always came. There he was, sitting on the bench with the puppy at his feet. He noticed her immediately, though he did not move. His eyes were calm, encouraging, and gentle. The girl's heart thumped wildly. For so long she had been invisible, unseen by everyone. Now someone was waiting for her. Waiting, and not with fear, but with kindness. The puppy barked softly, sensing her presence. It ran ahead, its tiny paws moving quickly across the grass. The girl froze for a moment, afraid it would run to the boy too soon. But then she realized she did not need to fear. The boy had never tried to force her before. He had never pushed or demanded anything. He had waited patiently, and now maybe it was her turn to take a step forward. She moved slowly, each step careful and deliberate. The boy's eyes followed her, gentle and steady. He did not rise. He did not call. He only watched, letting her set the pace. The girl's hands tightened around the stone in her palm, her fingers pressing it until it hurt slightly. She felt small and fragile, yet a strange courage coursed through her. The puppy reached her first, barking happily, jumping up and down. She knelt down, letting it sniff her hand. It wagged its tail furiously, pressing against her chest as though it had known her for years. A small laugh escaped her lips, a sound she had not made in a very long time. The puppy barked again, and in that simple exchange, a bridge formed between her world and his. The boy stood slowly, his expression warm and patient. "Hello," he said softly. Not loud, not demanding, just gentle. "I've been waiting for you." The alien girl hesitated. The words were simple, but they carried something she had never experienced: acceptance. She looked at him, her eyes wide. She wanted to step back, to retreat into the shadows, but the warmth of the puppy, the care in his gaze, and the weeks of quiet patience told her it was safe. She took a deep breath. For the first time in her life, she stepped fully into the open. Her hand still clutched the stone and the blanket, but she moved closer to him. The boy smiled, a small, encouraging smile. "It's okay," he said again. "You're safe." The girl knelt beside the puppy, letting it lick her fingers. She placed the carved stone gently on the ground, a silent gift. The boy noticed and nodded. He did not speak, understanding without words. Slowly, she let the blanket slip from her shoulders, revealing herself as she was. No fear, no hiding, just her. The boy sat down on the grass near her. "I'm glad you're here," he said simply. His words were quiet but strong, a promise that she would not be alone. She did not speak at first. Her lips parted, but nothing came. Instead, she let her eyes meet his. The boy smiled again, patient, kind, encouraging her in silence. Hours passed like this. They did not need many words. The puppy played between them, bringing small sticks and chasing its own tail. Slowly, the girl's laughter grew, soft at first, then louder. The boy laughed too, not at her, but with her. And in that shared space, the alien girl felt something she had never known: belonging. By midday, she could see the city beyond the park. People walked by, some pausing to look, but none came near. She realized she no longer felt afraid. She understood that not all humans were dangerous, that some could care, could be patient, could help without expecting anything in return. The boy reached out a hand toward her, slowly. She hesitated, then placed her small hand in his. The warmth of the touch was simple but powerful. She felt it reach past the fear she had carried for years. She felt her heart lighten. She felt trust. The puppy barked again, running around them, bringing the two together like a small, joyful link between worlds. The girl smiled fully now, her eyes bright with the sunlight. She whispered softly, words she had been too afraid to speak before. "Thank you." The boy's smile grew. "You don't need to thank me," he said. "I'm just happy you're here." For the first time, the alien girl believed it. She belonged, not to the shadows, not to the ruins, but here, in the world she had long feared. With the boy's patience, the puppy's joy, and her own courage, she knew that she could face anything. The day passed slowly, filled with small moments, soft words, laughter, and quiet trust. By evening, the girl looked at the boy and the puppy and realized she was no longer afraid of the world. She had stepped out of hiding, and the world, for the first time, was ready to see her. As the sun set, painting the sky with orange and pink, she sat between the boy and the puppy, feeling warmth, safety, and hope. The shadows of her past were still behind her, but they no longer controlled her. She had taken the first step toward a new life, one filled with trust, kindness, and the knowledge that she was never truly alone again. And in that moment, the alien girl understood something important. Sometimes the smallest act, one lost puppy, one kind human, could change everything.